So welcome to Arcade Legends 3.
This is the only legend.
So essentially, a couple more guys will join us. Billy Mitchell, who's also known as the Paris Hilton of the video game world. We'll be here soon. And first thing is, what do you think of John's hair today?
I did extra special things.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It looks great.
I saw some disappointed people yesterday. I had a hat on, so I made sure I made it extra puffed up today for everyone.
I think that, you know how there's been a lot of jealousy amongst people with high scores over the years in the competitive video game. I think hair jealousy is going to be sparked by you alone.
No, it is. That's the only thing anybody's jealous of me for is the hair.
So down at the end is Grant Theanum, who's in North Carolina. What town are you from again?
Durham.
Durham, and he's famous for being a world competitor on Frenzy and Berserk. And David Cruz is famous for Tron, and he's done 3 perfect Pac-Man games, which is simply amazing. John Salter is famous for point pressing on his hairdo. And Robbie Lakeman is the current world record holder on Donkey Kong. And me, I have no idea what I'm doing here. So, anyway, but I'm always honored to be here. And Billy, Paris Hilton of the video game world.
I had to make an announcement in the other room that our friend West was trying for the Donkey Kong record. If he doesn't get it, he will not be permitted in next year. And, Mr. Studley, all the way from Liverpool, England, is trying for Perfect Pac-Man, and we have immigration waiting for him.
So, anyway, let's just questions.
I have two.
Sure, Dave.
Start with the first one. When
It's a good
you
place to
play the
start.
game for extensive amount of time with Pac-Man, how do you eat, drink? There's no pause. I can't last more than an hour playing any of the games straight through because I get really achy.
Try 85 hours.
John, for 85 hours.
Hey, on Pac-Man, there is a way to walk away from the game and keep the game safe. There's a safe spot that you can park your character in, and that's near the the middle of the screen, near the lower right side. So if you do the pattern right and the ghosts are not looking at you, you move your character there, then they won't see you. Every game, most games have spots that you can go to. You just have to know how to get there or how to do it.
I don't have that luxury with Donkey Kong, unfortunately, but I mean, like every game has like their own. They're all different enough. So if you play a game enough time, you can kind of pick certain spots. So like with me, is that I usually just put like 1 bottle of water on top of my cabinet when I play, and then when you clear the rivet board and finish the level, it does it gives you music, it shows the animation. So that's a little bit more time than any other board that you clear. So that's usually when I would take the time to uncap my water bottle, maybe take a sip, and then get ready for the next level. But yeah, in Donkey Kong you don't really have that luxury because you can go on a barrel board and park it at the top, but the clock's gonna run down and you're gonna lose points, so you can't really do that either. So it's just you just have to just stick it out for 3 hours and yeah, just hope it works out.
Playing off of what David said on Pac-Man, it's, again, say 4, 5, even longer hours in a game. You can park it, but usually you're playing and it's a level of intensity and you want to go and you want to stay in the rhythm that you're going. When I did the first Perfect Pac-Man, I was playing, but there were people around me, and without lying to you, unlike today, we were fighting for every bit of media we could get. And Walter would remember the guy's name there from the Boston Phoenix or Boston whatever.
Back in 1999?
Yeah.
Oh, it came out. It was a guy in the room. He did a big feature on it.
Yeah, so they're there, and so while I'm playing there, can we talk to you? Yeah, what can I do for you? Then I'm playing, and he goes, what happened there? Yeah, I went off pattern. I almost died because I was getting distracted. And I'm playing. And so then I had played so long, at one point I go, playing longer than I wanted to, I go, can you do me a favor? Yeah, just stand here. Don't let anyone come near this machine. I gotta go to the bathroom. So then I go to the bathroom, and I come back, and he had guarded the machine, and I could keep playing. So yeah, you can do what David said, and I mean, I had to do it. First of all, I felt like we needed every bit of media we could, and there were people all around that needed him to guard the game, but the truth of the matter is, sometimes you have to. And in Donkey Kong, luckily it's less, it's 3 hours, and because, I don't know, in the best case scenario, you'd have, what, about 30 seconds if you had to?
Maybe in 3 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 20 seconds. Yeah, it's not that long.
Yeah, and actually I'm going to expand on all this a little bit longer. Berserk is kind of like Donkey Kong. You know, you can get, this is bad, I don't know Donkey Kong that well. You get 2 extra men.
Yeah, it's got the monkey.
Yeah. Yeah,
One.
really? Something about a barrel?
You just get 1 extra guy.
Okay, 1 extra, okay.
One extra guy, 4 total.
Okay, so in Berserk, you really can't take a break. Because even if you clear the maze, there's no timer per se, but Evil Auto becomes the timer. And my longest game in Berserk was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I could just kind of take my hands off the control panel for maybe 3 or 4 seconds, let my shoulders untense, but then it was right back at it. And after that, I mean, there are some games where you don't get extra men. It's grueling, and in some cases, that 2 hour game, you feel like you've been playing 10 hours. But as for eating or whatnot, I've done 2 attempts at Frenzy, and I've gotten 2.5 million twice, and those were 2 20-hour games. And with Frenzy, you get an extra man every 3,000 points. But you also, if you're not playing the game, you lose a man every 7 seconds. So what you end up doing is you just build up as many extra men as you can, and for me it was usually about 180 to 230 extra men. And there is one room in the game called the Robot Factory where it's constantly putting more robots on the maze. And the reason that's important is if you can park your character and they're putting out robots, like the robots are dumb. They can't figure out, oh, if I go below this wall, I can come back up and attack they try to go for a straight line. And if there's a wall there, they just get stopped. And in Frenzy, if Evil Auto comes out, for every robot on the screen, he'll slow down. So what I tried to do in my 2 attempts, you know, I was eating a hamburger or I had to go use the bathroom, find that one room, park my guy, and I might get 45, 50 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start losing a man every 7 seconds, that first almost minute can be huge because you can run, use the bathroom, come back, and you might have only lost 3 guys. So again, every game's different, but I know in Frenzy there is a way to do it.
But going back to Berserk, I would think that's the most brutal game. I mean,
Oh yeah.
You would have like 3 seconds. I mean, a simple walk and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, these guys are all playing the wrong game, actually, because in Armor Tag, I think at one point I had 1,100 men. In that game, you can crank up the extra guys, but the problem is you have to take a break somewhere along the line, because in a game like that, the length is going to be longer because there's a little more. You're able to play it longer because the amount of men you can get. But when you take a break, like that game, I can sleep a little bit and take a power nap. But I lose 225 men taking a power nap. So that game you can really crank the extra guys up, and it's like a Jekyll and Hyde game. It gets very, very easy in some points, but then it gets hard. Probably the hardest game I've ever played at a certain point, and you just bleed men, so you just kind of got to weather the storm. But with that amount of men that you can really crank up, when I take a break, I can actually go and eat something really quick, go to the bathroom, do everything I need to do, take a nap, come back, and then grind back out at it. But you're talking an 85-hour span in that game. So what happens is your power naps don't give you a big return on investment like they do earlier. Like later on in the game, when you hit 70, 80 hours, you might get your 20, 30-minute nap that before got you 8 hours, it might only get you 4 or 5. And then you just got to kind of, go through hallucinations and all that kind of stuff. But for Armor Tech, and I think Cubert's the same. George Left did 84 hours on Cubert, and same thing. He was able to crank up the extra guys and take a break and go back and forth. So, for those games, you can get a little bit more time, and it's a lot easier. I mean, it's almost a vacation compared to like Frenzy as far as being able to eat. But then you're talking just stamina. It ends up being you against yourself. The game's irrelevant really at that point. But some games you can it's easier to eat, take breaks, whatever. In some games it's impossible.
hallucinations is the interesting thing, especially in Kubrick. Because one of Billy and I's most favorite stories of all is when we were watching Jae Kim, this little guy from Korea.
14 years old.
14 years, it's at Twin Galaxies, it's January 1984, and he's playing Kubrick. He's now in like his 45th hour or so as we enter the second morning.
It's like
And
late Saturday morning.
late Saturday morning, it was like Sunday morning maybe, it was something like that. And he's completely losing it now because of the hallucination, losing men like crazy. And Billy,
He says, "Dude, you gotta help me, man." "How am I gonna help you?" He goes, "I can't see the screen."
yeah, because the eyes were so just, his vision was so eroding so fast. And essentially, so you have to understand that when someone can reach that advanced stage of a big marathon like that they're just losing it, and it is so hard for them to keep it all together at that time, and anything to distract them and completely throw them all off, like hitting a little thing on the road. If you're driving 150 miles per hour, the car's going to bounce off into a field or something. So he's prepared to just completely lose it at any moment.
There's people trying to help him. There's a couple of, as Kelly and Liz, a couple of nice groupie girls, and they were up all night and they were trying to feed him stuff. You know, he said he had a headache. They went and got him an aspirin. He didn't want it. They sort of forced it on him. So then he had an upset stomach, so they got him a little something for his stomach. He had been playing like 10 minutes after the aspirin. They put the thing up to his mouth and he spits the aspirin out in the cup. He never even took the aspirin. I mean, he was really going wacky. And he's doing the colors, and he's all over. And he goes down, he jumps in the corner, and he rides the disc to the top. He's all over. He jumps in the corner, rides it, and there's no disc. And he goes, "Where the hell is the disc?" I already used it. Oh. And he's doing the colors. And he gets all the colors, and he backs up. And his guy dies. He goes, "What happened?" I go, "Man, that's the wrong color." You know, he had changed them to all the wrong colors, and now he has no disc, and he's all over the place.
So at this moment of tremendous desperation, as the sun's rising and TV cameras that are back.
Yeah, and he's losing his men.
He's losing men like crazy, and he just can't do anything, and anything will unnerve him. The public's beginning to come in, and they begin to look over his shoulder, everything, and watch this. Then a little girl walks up and looks over his shoulder and watches intently for a while. Then suddenly she reaches in front of him and slaps the quarter down on the machine. And he's absolutely shocked, and he stares at the quarter almost like a person staring fixated at a snake that's looking at him. And Billy said, "What are you doing?" He says, "She put a quarter on the game." And Billy goes, "What?" He said, "Yeah, she put a quarter on the game." And Billy goes, "She put a quarter on the game?" And then you turn to the little girl and say, "You put a quarter on the game?" She says, "Yeah, and I'm next."
And I go, Jay goes, "She said she's next." And I go, "I guess she is." And she goes, "I better be." So then to finish the story, so then he's there and he's splashing water in his eyes. And Walter actually had this, in the back of the arcade, he had a mop sink. If anybody knows what a mop sink is, it looks like a bird bath. So we're trying to wake him up, and we know him, so we can abuse him. And he's the little guy, literally, we grabbed him by the shirt, and we took him, and we stuffed his head in the mop sink. We got the water on like this. And he's swinging at us, and, but he gets back to his machine, he's playing, and it doesn't last long. Then he's outside, and he's trying to let the sun go in his eyes, and he's trying to get his act together, because he's hallucinating. So it shows 9 men, and we keep waiting because he's losing guys. Suddenly we realize it shows 8 men. He's what we call into his men. So, "Jay, you're into your men." He runs back inside like he's suddenly going to play it, and suddenly start doing everything. He fought it right to the end. What did he think? He was going to save it because he's right on the last guy. And the last guy dies. "Son of a bitch!" He says. Like what do we expect to happen? But that's
Marathons are an amazing adventure.
And so with that story, it was 1980. Johnny's 85.
85.
And Jeff Peters was playing Kubrick as a marathon game. I was playing Centipede, another guy
It's
was
a big
playing
Iron Man contest.
Joust, another guy was playing Asteroids. And what was funny was everybody wanted to stay, everyone wanted to be there, and nobody was interested in anything except watching Jeff Peters play Kubrick because he was going to come apart. We had told everybody the different stories. And everybody who stayed to watch it, though, they weren't awake when he came apart. I mean, we kind of missed it, but he did. He came apart. So
I can relate. Next time I do an Armor Tag Marathon, I highly suggest watching. It's the best reality TV you'll probably ever see. The emotional ups and downs are so crazy, and I lose it pretty much, usually pretty early into it, so.
Well, Bill, John Salter versus Kim Kardashian. That'd be great. So,
Well,
yeah,
let me,
question, James.
My question is, like, the games you guys are so good at, back in the day, they didn't really have soundtracks to them, but they had, like, repetitive sounds to it. Do y'all ever use, like, I mean, like, for when y'all play, do y'all need the full experience when y'all play the games? Like, do you need audio cues? Do you need the sound to be as good as what you guys are?
For Tron,
Yeah, I absolutely rely on the audio sound.
Yeah.
yeah, for Tron, for Armor Attack I don't. But I mean, I do have to have the sound just because it doesn't complete the experience. But if there was no sound, it wouldn't matter. But for Tron, it definitely, there's like almost a rhythm to it.
Yeah.
You know.
Same with Berserk and Frenzy. Otherwise, I'd be Evil Auto comes out where you enter, and because the machine, I forget what it even says, and I should know because I played hours and hours of it. But the machine says something, and at that point, I know I have to get out of the maze, and it's, that's my cue of just gotta get out, gotta leave, and it's without that sound. Because when I first got my Berserk machine, was my first arcade game, the speech was broken, and I would play the game, and I couldn't figure out how people played it because Auto would just come out of nowhere, no sound, no nothing, come flying across the screen because he moves twice your speed, and I'm dead. And I ended up having to buy a completely new wiring harness because it turned out my wiring harness was bad. And this was before I realized I could trace wires. I mean, this was, very early on. And the second I had speech, two things happened. One, I knew when Auto was coming out, and two, I became terrified of it. Because, I knew he was coming, but when I heard that noise, it was a sense of dread. And my scores actually went down until I realized, wait a second, the noise comes first. I can use that to leave. So, I mean, you have to, I'm sure there are games where it's not as important, but I know for a lot of games, like Tempest is another one. Once you get to the higher levels, you gotta listen to the sound to know when the, levels are gonna disappear on you.
Some games can be annoying to you when you're doing
Stupid Siren and Pac-Man. We were talking about that last night.
how you guys play that? How about
like when Joel did his Frenzy.
fusion and kicks?
Yeah.
When Joel did his Frenzy at Richie Knucklez, so another guy was beside him playing Mr. Do nonstop all day. And it caused Joel to become quite unhinged. Because the sound of Mr. Do was so annoying and so distracting and disturbing that he went over to the guy and offered to pay him cash to stop playing. The guy says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that, I'm sorry." And so he offered him more cash. He says, "No." And so finally he called up before the morning. Richie said, "Come and make this guy turn his Mr. Do machine off." So some games can. I remember when I have to be around the Daytona game at Fun Spot, the soundtrack would drive me nuts because you hear it nonstop.
Daytona.
Yeah.
How that burned in my head forever. But some of the sounds in games, not as far as gameplay wise, but just they stick with you. Because like in Armor Attack, the chopper is like the nemesis. Like, the whole game revolves around that chopper. And when that game's at its max difficulty, when that chopper comes out, you have to either be ready for it, or when it comes out, know how to react to it. And it still scares the crap out of me when I play that game to this day. When it's in hard mode and I'm not ready for it, because you have to get in position. Once you're in position, you've got probably a 70-80% chance of knocking it out if you know what you're doing. If you're not, you have a 70-80% chance of dying. And if I'm not in position and I hear that, it still like sticks in my head and scares the crap out of me every time it happens, So it's kind of cool that, you still have that, you're not, at least out of all the games I've played that and the many hours I put into it, it's still cool that I have that reaction to it. I'm not like totally jaded and hate it and don't care anymore, So it's still, that's, to me, still the fact that there's fun to it and it excites me and that thing pops out. I'm like, oh crap, and trying to stay away from it. So there are sounds in certain games, at least for me, that, they don't really scare you like I just, jumping, but it's like, that it's time to do something, So it's pretty cool.
Well, to put a couple of stories together, going back to Kubert for a second, Tom Golf from Michigan. He played Kubert.
Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay. He stopped the game in an attempt to stop it right on 20 million on the button. He had 20 million, 8 points. He had it all calculated. He had 500 something men. He was going to he could sleep for 2 hours if he wanted to. he had 20 million, everyone's like this, watching. And I'm my usual self, I'm on the side, I go, just pull the plug, this guy's game's over. Everyone's like, what are you talking about? I go, I've seen this, I've been around the block, the guy's done, he's over. That was 20 million in 536 men, 21 million, the game was over. But there were 3 marathons going. One is the famous Tim McVeigh, 1 billion points, he was in the middle. Tom was to the left and Chris Emery was to the right. And he's playing Joust. And he's playing a game, he's coming unhinged for another reason. He's just playing, he's been playing so long, there's pterodactyls, and he's playing this game sucks, man! And I mean, there's people behind him that are watching him, and suddenly the guy goes, this sucks! He's not even dying or nothing, he's just going nuts from the game. And he's trying to waste time, so he's just stalling him, and he would have up to 6 pterodactyls. Imagine 6 pterodactyls.
Those are like the chopper and armor tag. Those things come out and scare the crap out of me.
So one of the things that Tim told me later on, he goes, I had to stay awake, man. He goes, those pterodactyls were driving me nuts. He said, I couldn't get drowsy or anything. So, yeah, the stories sort of come together.
Oh, it's on. Yeah, certainly, my game is Missile Command, and there's an absolutely key part of the gameplay, which is where sounds and gameplay come merge into one, and that's the low missile warning sound, which is a kind of sort of 3. And if that wasn't there, there's no way you could play the game to any kind of serious standard, because there's so much going on screen. You need either some sort of visual clue or some kind of audio clue that your missile base is low. And if that wasn't there, or if the sound was off, or if you can't hear that sound coming through because of the ambient noise of the rest of the arcade, you would absolutely screw up. So,
but I mean, you say that with confidence. Have you played games where the sound was out and you were like, or are you just sure of it? Have you actually tested it? Like you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. If the sound isn't up high enough, or if there's, or if John's playing, what's that game? Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.
If he's playing that with that constant woo woo wacka 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 next to you, and it's up loud, you can't hear a thing on the machine, and it's very tricky.
So then we have a duel. So he's turning it louder. So you're turning it louder. He's turning it louder. Yeah, I'd like to be in that room.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there's kind of sound effects, and there's sounds which are deliberately put into the game to give you a warning. I guess Donkey Kong's another example with the timer. When it goes below 1,000 points.
Yeah, when it's down to 1,000 points. It's kind of a hurry up type of music, and I mean,
You just had a sound effects panel.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't really need sound when I play Donkey Kong. It's it's
pretty good, actually.
But yeah, I don't really need too much sound on Donkey Kong, but it's kind of like I have to keep some things in mind. So like when I grab the hammer, it's almost like in my head I'm going, and then like it's like a certain note when the hammer runs out. So I'm like playing that song in my head, and then like tapping the jump button when barrels are coming, just to make sure a barrel doesn't run into me when the hammer runs out. But yeah, there'll be times when I don't have sound, and yeah, the hurry up under the 1,000 would be going on the timer, and then I kind of look at the timer. I'm, oh, geez, like I got to get out of this board, and then yeah, but I'm all right about it as long as I keep in mind about what I'm doing. But
Here's just a thought. I'm impressed with some of the sounds they made that sounded like the game. We actually had a panel where we had a contest where maybe the audience voted who made the best sounds that sounded actually like the real games. It was pretty good.
Well, yesterday when I announced Joel going for Berserk, I'm trying to put this up to the speaker like I was the other game so people could hear the game and they couldn't hear it. So what I did is I just did it myself. I didn't, fight like a robot. I was just doing it, pretending like I was the game. So I don't know if anybody else for it.
I didn't hear it, so
I heard it.
All right, next question.
When you guys go for a world record, are you allowed to utilize glitches or mistakes the manufacturers made in the games to get higher scores?
It depends on the game.
Say, I think it's Sinistar, you can get like over 200 guys if you get a correct shot. Is something like that allowed or no?
Actually, I don't know about this.
as long as you, if it's something you can't, if the game does it on its own, and it's not something repetitive over and over and over.
Or another example would be Spy Hunter, where you could go over broken bridges on Spy Hunter, if you guys are familiar with Spy Hunter, and you could make a couple of the enemies disappear permanently in the game if you utilize a glitch. Would something like that be allowed, or no?
I think if you can make it happen on your own, I don't think it is. I think
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
kinda
like Galaga, like you can eventually make them not fire anymore. Like
Yeah,
that's
it's another
that kind
great-
of,
yeah.
so I know like that kind of thing's not allowed in
Because
Galaga, but
there's different things. There's certain games like Asteroids Deluxe. When you hit, is it 99999? I think. Like every for $1 million, you get everything you shoot. You get an extra guy. And then as the more enemies you shoot, that incrementally goes down until you don't get that anymore. And there's nothing you can do about it. The game. It's just in the program. Not really programmed, purposely in the game, but it's a glitch in the
But
programming.
it's the same for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You're not utilizing something that somebody doesn't know. Like in
Yeah, the
Galaga,
basic concept is that you can't do something that's an unfair advantage and that it gave you that advantage while not giving someone else the advantage. If it's something that's a common line for everybody, then I guess it's accepted. But there's certain things that, because there were so many of them that we came across. There's a whole volume of it on the Twin Galaxies website. But
Yeah, well,
and I can't remember a lot of them.
Well,
anymore.
it's funny you should ask that because Armor Attack hadn't been touched in, I think, 33 years, as far as competitively for a record. And the
Probably be another 33 years.
and the thing about it is when I looked at that score, I'm like, that's impossible, and I'm like, how did somebody get that high of a score? And there's a glitch in the game that the chopper quits firing. And it shoots and the shot loops across the bottom. And until it hits something, the chopper won't fire because the shot hasn't hit its destination yet. So every time a chopper comes out, it's not firing. And how you get extra men in Armor Attack is every 5 choppers you shoot, you get an extra man. So you can just pick off choppers, leave 1 tank, just kind of like in Asteroids where you leave 1 rock and you shoot the ships. But you can't make it happen. That's the first thing I tried to do when I realized that glitch was there, is I bet you I have about 7 hours of game film, and I tried every technique, everything I could do to make it happen because I didn't want to waste time playing a game for 80 hours. I think I figured at the time it was going to take 90 hours to do the record. I wasn't going to play a game for 90 hours just to have it, disqualified. And I've proven that it happens on its own. It's more likely to happen in certain situations, but you can't make it happen. So for me, for that particular game, that happens and you drive back and forth, and just pick off choppers and it's really easy. But then when you die eventually and it resets, it's super duper hard. But it's something that anybody can do. Anybody can get on the game. And if you're good enough to play the game long enough for that glitch or that bug to kick in, then you're good to go and you can get a lot of extra men. But the trick is being good enough to play long enough. It's kind of like shots on goal. For every chopper that comes out, it increases your chance of that happening. It might happen in the first minute, it might take 2 hours. And to play an Armor Attack more than 5 minutes is pretty tough. So
I think it, and Walter and Billy are probably more experienced with this, but certainly the current iterations of Twin Galaxies, I know it's something that they're fighting to resolve, but when you've got so many video games for starters, and you've got so many different ways of playing it, and as John says, so many bugs and cheats, or whatever you want to call them, don't know, cheats, but who's going to sit and look at, John discovers something new in Armor Attack and he's filmed a 48-hour game. Well, you've got to find someone with the dedication to sit in front of that for 48 hours. He's got to have a basic knowledge of the game, and he's then got to assess this new angle that maybe John's found on a particular game, and he's got to work out whether John's cheating or whether he's using a computer or whether it's genuinely something new. Is it deemed as legitimate? Is it not deemed as legitimate? It's a logistical nightmare, I would imagine, Walter. I mean, you probably know better than I do, but and with the advent of the internet and YouTube, and everybody's far more interested in the precise nature of the code and the way these games have been broken down. And I think it's a huge issue for the world of high schools going forward.
yeah, well, the frustrating thing is like, I'll use Armor Attack as an example because it's almost a new game for a lot of people because it sat on the shelf and nobody touched it for a while. That I think I would like to say I know everything about the game, but there probably is something I don't know. But you'd be hard pressed to find someone that doesn't know just so many intricate, small nuances and stuff I've discovered from the game, from doing the research and ripping it apart to be able to marathon it, and then actually doing those marathons. I learned probably double of what I thought I knew about the game just playing it for that amount of time. And so to have somebody scrutinize it that just watched me play for 5 minutes and has no clue how the progression of the game works, how it's programmed and stuff that I know, it's it's almost ridiculous, you know, so it's really hard. So many things that they don't know, and they can't base their decision on actually what's fact about the game.
Right. And based on some of the things you just said, one of the most interesting things that we had to face between Galaxies over the years is that some of the games, you know, because of just the way it's written, the way it's designed, there'll be so many things in any particular game that could come up that quite often the only person who could assess the correctness of your particular game is your biggest rival, who's also trying to go for the world record. And so quite often it was complicated because only that rival who would watch your gameplay could say he's doing it right, but then he'd learn all your gameplay secrets. And that was an interesting thing, because if you're a world champion on a game, James, and then David wants to go for your record, but you just spent $500 and 7,000 hours of playing to get your high score, and you discover things no one else in the world knows, you would want to protect those secrets that you paid so highly for in terms of time and dollars. And out in the outside world, a lot of people get upset that we can't hide people's gameplay, it's not right. But there was the concept that he had an investment, he would want to protect it, and if his rival, David, was the only person qualified to watch his gameplay and verify it, he would learn all his secrets that he paid all the money and all the effort for. So it was real complex, caused lots of firestorms, because you could see both sides of the coin, that people should know what the person's doing, but then the person had some sort of vested interest in terms of money and time, so should he be allowed to save, you know? And then the people who don't get shown the tape, they'll think there's something secret that's being covered up and that there's cheating going on and collusion between galaxies. So it got really hard to deal with because it was a new field, and we're all pioneers.
You know, you still say it that way, both sides of the coin. That's all, you still have that accent. In some ways, it gets resolved easily. Like you say, Armor Attack, we'll call an obscure game, so there wasn't a lot of controversy about it. Like when Joust came out, there was the Pterodactyls. It was a tremendously popular game. So it was so far out in the open that the manufacturer actually changed and put out an alternate chip. So in some ways, it works itself out because the more popular the game is, the more it gets brought to the table.
But in that particular case, the manufacturers did it because the distributors and the arcade operators were upset because a person could sit there and play the game for 40 hours and lose them a lot of income.
They didn't do it for us. Without lying,
That's
the
right, it was for the
manufacturers
players.
never did anything for us, ever.
You know, that kind of goes back to like the glitch bug questions. These games were never meant to be played for more than, what, 2 or 3 minutes?
Right.
You know, they're meant to make money, you know, and so, you know, they weren't extensively play testing these games like they do now with, you know, Xbox and stuff like that. So that's why once you get some of these games, 2 or 3 minutes into the game, some crazy thing might happen because no one ever even thought anybody would play that far into it.
Right.
I think later on they did once they realized how good people were getting, you know.
Right. When I was at Namco, I thought, geez, I can finally ask these questions. And I'm in front of Masaya Nakamura, the father of Pac-Man, and his inner circle of marketing and programmers. Nobody spoke English. And
Not even really.
yeah, me and the interpreter, that was it. And I asked him a question, and I'm waiting like this for the answer as they all talk. And they come back and they go, Mr. Mitchell, we have no idea. We never thought sports like this possible. And I thought, well, that doesn't help. So I go, well, and I give him another question, and go back and forth, and I'm waiting like for the answer. And the answer we all finally gonna get. And he goes, Mr. Mitchell, you know far more about Pac-Man than we know. So I like it when I get the wise guys. Somebody will say something like, oh, you think you're so smart. You think you know more about the game than the guy who made it. Yeah, he told me I did. And you know, they've made cell phones and stuff like that. And different companies have had questions for them that they have no idea. And they've referred them to call me. And they'd send me something to test it to see if it's authentic. So that's kind of flattering, obviously. But they said, we have no idea we just run program. We have no idea how it falls together. And a true glitch that upsets the apple cart, they don't learn that until somebody brings it to their attention. And again, if it's gonna cost them money, as in the case of Joust, they'll change it. If it makes one of these guys unhappy, they could kill us.
One of the interesting side stories, It's just that the designers quite often
get real good at the game, then the game goes out to the public. And within a couple of days, the public is 10 times better than the game designers. And that always blew their mind because they did it, so they thought they'd understand it best. But there's just some ingenious quality in the top gamers that allow them to just cognize the gameplay and just turn it into something beyond which the designers themselves could ever envision or ever pull off themselves. So I remember like when they came out with Hydra Thunder, all the inside programmers had very high scores, but then the public would immediately start having much higher scores.
No, one last thing, that's where I get the phrase, I would be there. I have this phrase that I always say to Walter when I'm picking on him. But I go there and I do something and the manufacturers go, wow, as he says, because they've been testing it for months. Wow, we can never do that. And I say, well, it's because you're not Billy Mitchell. That was my line. So I use that line in humor when I'm picking on Walter. Walter say, I can't get this reservation. Well, you're not Billy Mitchell. I'll get it. Sorry.
I can't even follow that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the speechless Tony Tillman.
I was just going to make the point about we all sit up here and we talk candidly about games and we go all bleary-eyed when we think about playing all these machines in the 80s and we rue the fact that in the UK we reckon there's about 10 missile command cabinets in the whole country. And that's from when they were everywhere, from what I remember when I was back there in 80, 81, 82. But I think it's really important to remember that these things were not built so that in 30 years' time we could all come to Florida and celebrate classic arcade gaming. They were just money-making machines. That's all they were. They were like washing machines in a, do you call them laundromats here?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. So a guy would buy 20 washing machines from Maytag, stick them in a retail outlet and expect to make money. Video games were exactly the same thing, and back then they were no more special or exciting or cultured than a washing machine, I think, anyway. And I think most operators had a very blunt view of these things, and they were just there to make money, which is why you see Tempest cabinets now painted black with a horrible jammer cap stuffed in them, because that's what they did back then. No one was playing Tempest anymore. The guy was there to make money, so a bit of black paint, strip out all the guts, get rid of that stupid vector monitor that keeps breaking down, and they shove an old jammer game in it. So I think when we talk about kind of breaking down games, it's really important to remember that the manufacturers didn't care, the operators didn't really care. It was all one big money-making machine. And what you see now is because of the gamers kind of pushing those games beyond where anybody thought they would be played to. So.
There are 4 cabinet versions of Missile Command, I believe. The Cocktail, the Cabaret, the Full Size, and Environmental. When you do the world record, which one do you use? And are you limited to just one, or are there different classes? You got a cabinet for each world record attempt? Since there's different size trackballs.
Yeah, I think it's generally accepted that if you go for a world record, you do it on a standard upright cab like the one next door.
Oh, okay.
We're opening a can of worms, aren't we?
Yeah, who's listening to this?
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's an unwritten rule, but I'm quite sure if somebody wanted to set a record on the Cocktail machine with the, is it a 3-inch, 2.5-inch trackball?
2.5.
2.5-inch trackball. I would imagine it would be regarded as a separate track, but I think at the moment, just and in the past, it's always been the standard upright cabinet.
Hey, the cursor speed might be a little different on the.
So wait. So let's say,
those of you who don't understand that, we'll explain that when the camera's off.
So let's say I get good in 15 years at tournament Missile Command. So if I did it in my environmental Missile Command, it wouldn't beat yours because I was just sitting down inside it.
I'm just a player. I can't.
Yeah, how many players in the past have you victimized with your philosophy?
I know, hundreds.
I mean, it really, There are very few games that have any difference code-wise or hardware-wise when it comes to the different cabinets. So I mean, like Missile Command, you have the cockpit, you have the upright, you have the cabaret, the cocktail. It's the same board, it's the same hardware. The only thing that really comes to mind is being slightly different, and Twin Galaxies doesn't choose between the two that I can think of is actually Major Havoc. A dedicated Major Havoc came with Ampliphone, which could draw the vector lines faster, so the game actually runs at 12 megahertz. But Atari also sold it, and I think this is why there's not a problem with it. Atari sold it as an upgrade kit for Tempest or Space Duel, but those came with 6100s. The 6100 couldn't render the graphics that fast, so if you have an upgraded cabinet that wasn't dedicated, you're not running at 12 megahertz, you're actually running at 10, and the game does play slightly differently. And the other thing is, with the Tempest conversion, you have a spinner knob, whereas with the dedicated Major Havoc, it's a roller. But I mean, that's really the only game I can think of where there was actually a difference on the board between the two cabinets themselves.
I don't know about you other guys, but clearly you get Pac-Man's a good example. So John, the guy's going for a perfect game today. He has a Pac-Man Cabaret at home, which has, I think, a 14-inch monitor. 13. And that's what he practices on, and that's his sort of hardcore machine. So when he comes to an event like this, and it's a full-size cab with a, is it 19-inch?
Yeah, 19.
It takes him a while to adjust because whilst it's all exactly the same, it's just happening on a bigger screen and it's a different, completely different environment, and he's using different tools. But I guess it's like renting a hire car. You know, once you know how to drive, you just you adjust based on what you're actually playing. So.
Yeah, going back to the question, I'm going to embarrass Rob here, my partner. Say hi, Rob. Hi, Rob. Now we'll go all the way back into the 80s, like you were saying. It was no different than a washing machine. It takes quarters. You'd ask somebody a question, and it was an attitude. I don't care. You'd say, oh, I don't care. And what I would pick on Rob about is he put together a game, and let's say the marquee was broken. He'd take a white piece of plexiglass, and he'd take letters and stick on MS period. He'd spell out Miss Pac-Man. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, doesn't affect the income of the game. And it's like, well, what about a matter of like pride and a little bit of, no. And he would say to me, he'd say, now if you have that Miss Pac-Man and one right next to it, all right, yeah, the regular one will make more. But if it's just this one, it won't affect the income of the game.
You're confusing me with someone else.
Now, I will give him the disclaimer, he doesn't do that now. Now he's into things. When we opened the arcade in Orlando Airport, he said to me, or I just sort of ran roughshod over him. I said, it's going to look like no other arcade in the world. And I did that, and he was happy with it. Of course, we lost the lease, and that's gone now. But now the one we have in Fort Lauderdale, he goes along with the fact, he says, no, we got to make this like no other place in the world. So he was Rob then, but he's closer to me now. If that's not dangerous, there's two of us now.
Wouldn't it be cool if we were here talking about washing machines?
I like the Whirlpool, you know, the front loader.
If it's kind of turned out differently in like video games, but actually we were here at a washing machine.
I'm sure that there is a convention someplace where there's a board of experts who do discuss Maytag, Whirlpool, or you know, GE,
Sorry,
Sears, all the washing machines.
I've mentally left the room now. So.
Quick question for Billy or Robbie. If you guys were to break a world record on the 4-stack for Donkey Kong, would it be qualified as a different bracket?
What's a 4-stack?
Like the 4-board, the 4-board.
I think that was a Japanese version or whatever.
Like the first time, when the Radar Scope came out, they did all these conversions.
It was used mostly in cocktail.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to answer it, two answers. First of all, without lying to you, I don't want to speak for Robbie. I wouldn't play it. I don't think I've ever played that, not at least on purpose. But to actually sit, again, you've invested all this time to create this skill, and now you're going to play and set it on a record that's going to be controversial at best. No, I mean, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from my point of view, I've always played on 2 board sets, and I actually had a friend in Arizona. He has a cab that had a 4-board set in it, and he he thought it was harder for some reason, so he said, come over and try out my machine. I have a save kit on it. You can put your initials, put up a score. I was like, yeah, sure. So second try, kill screen, it was not like 903. And I was like, there's no difference. So I didn't see any difference in the gameplay. I don't see why it wouldn't be accepted if the gameplay was exactly the same. But they're just not as common. So I don't think it's just ever been brought up as an issue.
But to expand on it a little bit, when I was in 2007, before the movie came out, I wanted to set the record to upset the raffle card in the movie. Just to show you I do have a cynical side, just like the movie says. So exactly 25 years to the date, when I got my first kill screen is when I did that score. But what I did with the board, to be unprecedented, Walter was saying, this is crazy, this is crazy. I think it was Rob, got the game, we took the board, we sent it to Nintendo, to a guy named Wayne, who had to go up in the attic and get special tools in order to test it because they don't do that anymore. And he went and he tested every single prom. I mean, however many there are. And he authenticated that it was absolutely legitimate. And he said of the 4 different board sets they've made, that is the most difficult one. Okay, then he sent it, instead of sending it to me, Walter made arrangements for the guy at Gamesworks, who we lost track of, who actually received the board, went to the event here in Orlando, plugged it in, locked the cabinet with a padlock, and the security guard there, and they kept it at the location. And then the next day I showed up to play it. Then they took the board out, and they FedExed it back to Nintendo. I never even got to see it, and he re-verified that it was the same board, retested it all. Then he sent it to me in a box. I still got it in a box, I never even took it out. But sometimes you go to extents like that, just, I don't know, just to twist the knife a little bit.
Prove it.
Well, I don't know that anybody that I do that.
Is anybody going to go for a world record? Like the gentleman over here, you seem to be very knowledgeable. Are you thinking about going for world records on something? In the white shirt? Yeah.
You threw him off when you called him gentleman.
I got a Spy Hunter cockpit at home, and I'm pretty good at it. I could probably I'm going to shoot for second, but first place is like
25 million, I think.
Well, see, that score was so high, there was a lot of controversy if it was real. And
well, I know I could get this up to second place, but first place, I don't know about that. So
Holdine is pretty good.
yeah.
Holdine is really good. Yes, sir.
Do you guys practice on machines at home, or do you go somewhere?
If we have the machines, we'll practice at home.
Yeah.
I prefer to.
If it's a game I like that I'm actually gonna go for world record on it, I'll get the cab and do it. I'm not a big not a hate name or anything, but I like playing on the original controls, and so that's a big thing for me. Playing on MAME, you're playing on the computer. It's not remotely the same, so I would get the cab if I was willing to go for record.
Yeah, I mean, same here too. I mean, especially with a game like Donkey Kong, it's hard to travel to a live location and keep popping in quarters because you're trying to point press on the earlier levels, which are the hardest levels in the game. You're trying to get to level 5, and then once you get to level 5, it's easier. So you're constantly just restarting over and over and over and over again, and it was actually easier for me in the long run to pay $600+ and lug it up a flight of stairs and put it in my apartment. It was actually less of a pain to do that than actually go somewhere and keep popping in quarters and trying to set up a camera, and then there's people like watching, or you never know, someone's gonna trip over your camera, or I mean, if Billy's around, sometimes cameras get knocked over, but that's why I would definitely have my own Donkey Kong machine. There's just really no other way to do it, especially where the score's at now. It's a rare thing to have a game like that.
I'd be interested to hear from Tony, because let's face it, games are harder to come by in England. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, there are no locations in England. I think a couple of guys have tried. And
Did you actually find your game in England, or did you have to get it from here?
yeah, I found it in the UK. So there are a handful of hardcore guys. One guy springs to mind, Archie McLean, who's also a programmer. He's written several games on consoles over the years, but he certainly was the sort of the man in the UK in terms of importing cash from the US. So he would do shipping containers at a time of 30, 40, 50 cabs, get them over in the UK, and then
You paid more of a premium.
I think Archer was the backbone of the Classic Gaming Expo UK in 2005.
Yeah, the cabs in 2005.
Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, certainly in the UK, cabs are a lot harder to come by, but they tend to sort of change hands. So there's a sort of group of probably 100 collectors, I would say, and we have forums in the UK and stuff gets sold. So you find the same cabs, and guys come to your house and they go, "I owned that cab 6 years ago," and it's kind of done around. But we definitely pay a premium for that. I think there's a market in the UK for some sort of public arcade. I don't think it's sustainable as an arcade, but I know there's a lot of interest in the US barcade model where you have a bar and arcade games. And I know a handful of guys have been looking at potentially sort of looking at that business model and seeing if they can make it work.
There wouldn't be barcade, there would be pubcade.
Pubcade.
Well, in England, people look for any excuse to open up a bar, won't they?
Say again.
In England, people look for any excuse to open up a bar. won't they?
Precisely.
The one thing I like that we didn't hear here, and not everybody would agree with us, is the M word. Who knows what the M word is?
Oh,
Is it missile command?
Maine, because Maine is fun, you can learn from Maine, you can talk about it, but you don't take what you do on Maine and call it a world record. You can sit there and go to a driving range and have fun and learn and practice. You don't do that and pretend like you're a good player. You have to do what you have to do. And I do hear the crybaby stories. Well, I don't have one of those games near me. Well, look at him. He had to import it from the U.S. So,
I mean, and
I didn't win Augusta because I couldn't get to Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's okay. Here, we'll just deal with you.
I mean, I've done some crazy drives to get some of the arcade games I have. I mean,
I think every time I call you, you're in the car going to get a game.
I mean, I'll do one day. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and previously, when I first got into this, I was in Virginia. But I'd be doing, one-day trips to northern Pennsylvania to get one game that someone had at the right price, or Pittsburgh, or I've been to more states now here in the U.S. because of just acquiring arcade machines than I have just traveling. Because normally, just hop on a plane and it's like point A to point B. I mean, it's, I've been all over the East and probably, central U.S. just buying arcade machines.
I hate you, Grant,
I know, I hate it too.
Next.
What do you guys look for, man? Or do you guys see championship grade machines or whatever? You just look from individual buyers or?
Craigslist.
Yeah, Craigslist.
We're on Craigslist. Grant and I are on Craigslist every day.
Cheap and broken.
Multiple times.
Cheap and broken.
Yeah, exactly.
And bulk. Yeah. That's the huge thing. Cheap, broken, bulk.
$50 game fixes.
Yeah,
I mean something like that sometimes. Yeah.
See, when you take somebody who's really invested time and money in it, the game looks like it's brand new. I mean, they have to have 1,000 and 1,500 and 2,000. They do. They've invested so much. And when it's a game that we actually use or we use in a tournament, it doesn't matter what kind of shape it's in. We have to go through it and check everything anyway. So, yeah, we'd rather get the lady who says, please get this out of here. It hasn't worked in 5 years. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, broken games on Craigslist. And I'll do a search on Craigslist, like in a 50 mile. I don't drive very far anymore. I did for a couple, but it's not worth it to me.
And you don't have to.
Yeah, if you search enough, someone will come around. And then once it's like anything. It's like you pay your dues. When I first got into it, I overpaid. Like my Tron, I paid way too much for. And as you get into it, you get in the group. It's like you know when you call someplace looking for a game on Craigslist that 5 other guys that had probably already called. So you're trying to beat these guys to make the call. But as you get into the hobby, collecting, you'll start to get deals. People will start calling you because they know that you're into it. Like my aunt or something will be like, hey, I know this guy who has this game. And you don't know what it is, and you go over there, and it might be some game that you really want, or some rare game. So the more you get into it, the more connections you make, the more people know that you're doing it. It makes a huge difference because now I don't pay nearly as much. And then when you get the games you want, you'll overpay just because you want it so bad on that first one. And then after you're into it for a while, it's like somewhere along the line you're going to find it, at a good deal. But like I do Craigslist and eBay is always bloated prices, but you still got to scan it because every once in a while there's that guy that just wants to get it out of his house and he knows that eBay is everybody's going to see it. And so you might get a good deal on eBay. So just do your searches, and I do my search by how much I want to pay or distance, and you just keep looking, and eventually you'll find something. And if you do have to, if you can't repair the stuff yourself, you know, you're gonna start spending a lot of money too. So, you know.
Yeah, this is actually like the last place to come because people have the games here, they've invested, they look really good. I mean, there was a game we were looking for, and the guy got it. He hasn't done a lot to it. It's not even here. So he's going to let us have it for what he got it for, just as a favor. But to actually walk in and, ooh, nice and crisp, like those Q-Birds out there, you're not going to get a deal on those. The guy put a lot of effort into it, and that's what he does for a living. So,
Do you guys do any mental preparation before going after, you know, any record that you guys set up? Is there like a, you know, something that you constantly have to do, like a little good luck thing, you know?
I
wouldn't say good luck for me, but I'm constantly like 3 days before on my Frenzy machine. You know, I'm in there with my multimeter because Frenzy's 7 boards all interconnected, and I'll go across and check the voltages because, I mean, that's really the biggest thing in a marathon that will kill you is, you know, something on the power board going off and sending, you know, you're supposed to have, you know, usually 5 volts, 12 volts, and -5, but Atari has some weird ones. I mean, every manufacturer is different, but I'll go in there and like, I'll test it at like different times of the day, like when sun's hitting the machine or whatnot, and try to get it so close to 5, you know, because you just don't want to cook the parts. And I'll stress about that, you know, test the cameras, make sure you have enough hard drive. Does my battery backup work? You know, I'll purposely like hit the breaker in the house and make sure the game is still on. And, you know, I'll probably do that until 24 hours before. And 24 hours before I start, I stop. I don't worry about it. I'm like, it's done, it's done. If it's not set up, I'm not going to worry about it. And then the one thing I try to do is not think about the game. Just relax for 24 hours, because if I'm going for a marathon, it's grueling. My shoulder's gonna hurt, my wrist is gonna hurt, my feet are gonna hurt, even if I'm sitting in a stool. I mean, and the biggest thing is the hallucinations, you know, and
those are fun.
Yeah, they are.
The first time they're not, I'm supposed to get used to it.
Well, for me, I never had hallucinations, but I remember at one point I was playing Frenzy, and it was around 18 hours, and I felt like the game changed, because Frenzy is a very left-to-right game. You know, you can go up and down, but it's left to right. And I remember at one point, I felt like I was going up and down. And then at one point, I remember very clearly, I was like thinking as if I was a robot and this random human was coming in and shooting all of us for no reason. And I was like, I'm a bad person for playing this game. What am I doing? And it's like, you'll just get the weirdest things going. And I think on my first stream, I started like singing about, you know, Evil Otto's chicken tastes like fresh human meat. You start doing stuff you would never see yourself doing. And part of it is, you get to a point, and John, I'm sure you've done this, where it's, you get so good at the game that it kind of goes to the back of the head. And you're not consciously playing. Your eyes are seeing, and your hands are responding. But your mind is like, okay, I'm tired of doing this, let's do something else. And I kind of think that's, oh, the bird. Yes, we have an old guy in the back.
Oh, geez.
I'd like to ask you a question. In your humble opinion, who's the greatest dessert player alive?
I could be really insulting here. Chris Era.
Yeah, right. Well, this is him right here.
Yeah, I know. Well, don't worry, he's hallucinating again.
Yeah.
But that question leads to another story, and everybody likes to hear these stories. So Walter, you start the story on the whole.
The story I was going to tell?
Yeah.
Oh, well, one thing, the question was, well, are there preparations to do to get ready? Which Joel has the biggest preparations in the history of gaming. But
oh yes, I've been there and
but the first time we even came face to face was the concept. When we're real worn out, we've traveled for days. It's the U.S. national video game team. We just went 800 miles.
Rushmore to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Okay, we had just driven many hundreds of miles. We arrived at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and there in Coeur d'Alene, we had 5 news teams around us, interviewing us, all vying for attention at the same time. We had 2 TV stations, We had 2 newspapers, 1 radio station. They're all trying to interview us literally at the same moment.
But we
okay?
never had any money, we hadn't eaten the whole way, and we were just dying for something.
It's very funny.
But then just then, the lady who owned the place, she goes, "Pizza's ready." We all got up and abandoned the position. We all went to eat pizza. And all the newscasters were like this. Because we hadn't eaten in like 3 days. And so we all went, we ate pizza, and they just had to wait until we got done eating.
Is there a trading card going to come out of your new exercise video, Walter?
It's called the Berserk Workout.
The berserk out.
Berserk out. So ladies and gentlemen, in the back row, that old man is none other than George Clooney.
He was in a horrible chemical accident.
That was Joel West.
Joel West, the model.
That's Joel West. He's the only one that has the length of time in this as me. We actually were at the first event at Life Magazine in November 1982.
And he was, Life Magazine. And he's the man who coined the famous phrase.
You what, sir?
He's the man
Yeah,
who
see,
coined the famous
exactly.
phrase.
Get out, right. You teach a monkey how to play a certain number of rooms.
No,
No.
the one with swords.
The one with sword, iron sharpens iron.
That's a good one.
I got several.
That clears everything up.
That's a good one.
Next question.
Good effort, Joel.
Hey, Joel, did you bring a t-shirt? You're nothing without a t-shirt, right?
That's right, that's right. Nothing without this t-shirt. We have at the table.
Okay, I watched Chasing Ghosts in crowded theaters. I think it was 12 times. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, because they did the LA Film Festival, they did Sundance Film Festival and everything. And he is responsible for 5 of the greatest quotes in the Chasing Ghosts movie. Has everybody seen Chasing Ghosts? Anybody? Yeah. But there's one scene when the camera's at a distance, when Ron Bailey and Joel West are sitting on the porch in a late night, and suddenly he says,
If they dropped a bomb on this place right now, they'd kill 2 best Berserk players alive.
it's exactly, if they drop a bomb now, that goes to 2 best Berserk players in the world. I think that's
In
exactly.
the world.
What-
I split myself.
What two guys did you say that to?
We were just
Mike
talking.
Joel.
He missed the point completely.
But anyway, the audience screams when they say that line. So it's just it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite lines from the movie.
The Southern, what can I say?
The gentleman from Tampa Bay had a question, and you were interrupted him.
I've been digging around, I just picked up a couple of my first machines, and I noticed there's a lot of multiplayer games coming out now, like 270 and 160 and 1. Like, do you guys get into those? Do you do the individual?
No, because they run a very early version of MAME. I mean, there are a very select few multi-boards out there that are actually designed to either run on real hardware or it's the old hardware redesigned onto a newer board. And that's really nice, and usually it's multiple games. And that's nice for people that don't have a lot of room, but in terms of going after a record, you do it on the original.
Yeah, I think it's good to have, I have a 16-1, that's like the most common. You see 16-1s on Craigslist, a billion of them. Because the guys, what these guys, and I'm not a huge fan because I like the concept of it, but the problem is these guys will take a working, good shape, classic arcade game and destroy it to put a 16-1 with a track ball and all. And I'm guilty of that. I did that to a Frogger actually, but at least when I did it, I actually did it I made it so it was easily converted back though. I didn't destroy the game to do it. I actually put a different control panel in it. But that's a problem I have with those. But I do have the 16-1 in a more of a current cabinet, like I think it's maybe a Golden Tee or something that there's a billion of those around. But yeah, I think it's good to have one in the arcade just because it has multiple games on, the kids will play and all that. But as Grant said, for records, you can't use that for record attempts.
For those of you who are behind us and protesting that habit, that practice, we'll be burning an effigy of Rob out there in the parking lot after the show, okay?
Again, he's not like that anymore. But in the early days, I mean, he had a domino man. Remember the dominoes on the machine? It was like the coolest thing in the world. And he goes, well, I converted the domino man. I go, you can't convert it. It's got the dominoes on it. He goes, no, I ripped them off. What do you, think about it. You ought to be put in jail. Again, he's not like that anymore. He's been saved. No, Tony was speaking tonight.
I'm wondering, so if
I don't know if you guys played multiple titles, but I guess you all have a world record, but I wanted to ask, what made you pick the title and go for the world record on that individual one? So, for a lot of people, the King of Kong kind of brought people in Donkey Kong. I'm one of those people. So what made you pick the individual one? And then I also had another question, maybe for some of you older guys. Was there a nostalgia thing where you sort of came back into the scene, the way Donkey Kong or the King of Kong kind of brought people back in? And if so, what was that that brought you back?
Well, I'll go first and I guess we'll go down the line. For me, I've only been in the scene since January 2012 in the arcade scene. I actually got into this because I liked the older games anyway, and my favorite game was Berserk on the Atari 2600. I got really good at it. I loved it, it was fun, I liked how simple it was. And someone made a comment to me one time, they're like, oh yeah, but the arcade version is much better. And, I just never really put it together because when I grew up, I went to the arcade, it was, Mortal Kombat 3 and every single sports game you could imagine. I didn't realize where it came from. So I was looking it up and, I type in, Berserk arcade, and sure enough, I come up to, it was like a Netflix link, and I watched Chasing Ghosts, and that's where I learned about Berserk, Joel, Walter, Billy, and everything. And I didn't actually see King of Kong, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And I spent like the next 9 to 10 months looking for a Berserk. And I finally found one, got home, speech didn't work. And I played that one night, and I did horrible. I mean, it's like, I don't even think I got to 3,000 points. I mean, I was so bad because the game was so much harder. But from that night on, I never played a single console in my house again. I actually have sold basically my entire console collection just so I can get one machine. It's like, oh hey, I can sell all my Dreamcast games with 100 games, and I can get this broken machine. And I actually would do stuff like that. And so I have no more consoles. I mean, and that's how it started for me. And then it was just, I got to figure out the game. It's like, oh hey, yes, I got 10 more points. And it just, you just build on it, and it's really fun. So.
Well, it's funny, one of the things that happened was, in 1983, when Chris Ira, in the back there, Chris Ira and I learned what it took to create a perfect score on Pac-Man. We never shared it with anybody, with anybody except Walter. And as the years would go on, and again, competitive gameplay back then came to a close in 1986. We just always kept it a secret. We always could do a perfect score, and we always knew what it took, and it was just like, gee, when are we going to do this? But things closed, so we didn't do it, and it went through the 80s and 90s, and occasionally he'd get a phone call from somebody who would claim something stupid, and I was always the hatchet man. I'd get on the phone with them, yeah, all right, tell me about this, that, this, all right, click, they weren't for real. Then a call came in 1998. Remember, we'd just been sitting on the knowledge and not actually making it happen. A call came in 1998 from what we call the Canadians, and who I've since become close friends with. But so the call comes from the Canadians, and Walter calls me, yeah, we got these guys from Canada claiming that they can do A, B, and C. And I says, all right, I'll get Chris on the phone, we'll call you back. I says, Chris, I got a couple guys we gotta blow away here. He says, okay. We have 5 people on a phone call, and I fire a half a dozen questions at him just to get rid of them. And he hit every question right on the spot, and I go, wow, it's showtime. These guys are for real. So all these years later, these Johnny-come-latelys are going to come and scoop up what we should have done long before. So then became the perfect race. But that's what pulled us back into it in 1999.
So let's hear it for the panel for legendary.